But yours were.
Hello? Alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we're just trying to fix the microphone problem. We'll be
You're on. That's good.
back in
Okay,
just a
tell
minute,
people
inshallah.
where- Can mute yours. You can turn your volume off now. What page in the PDF? Bab Sifat al-Salat, the one before that one. Okay, Bab al-Imam. طيب. Okay, inshallah. Can you guys... you can hear me? Okay, play. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. We start now, inshallah.
Abdul Hakim. Saying, you know.
It's good. Okay. طيب, we begin inshallah. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Bab al-Imama, the chapter on the Imama, being the Imam in the Salah, leading people in prayer, and praying behind the Imam. Obviously, being an Imam in Salah has virtue to it. It was the place of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was the khulafa that came after him always led the salah. So it was known that the best amongst the people would be the one that led the salah. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said when asked about who should lead the prayer, he said, "Aqra'ukum bil Quran," or bi kitabillah, the one who's most knowledgeable and best in reciting the book of Allah. So no doubt it has a virtue. If, for example, consider the fact that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that if they knew what was in the first row of reward and adhan, they would come crawling. But if that's the reward for praying in the first row, what about the reward for leading people in salah? It can only be more than that. Okay, so no doubt it has its virtue. And we'll begin here, inshallah, with the first hadith. Bismillah.
Bismillah walhamdulillah salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah ba'd. قال المؤلف رحمه الله تعالى باب الإمامة عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أما يخشى الذي يرفع رأسه قبل الإمام أن يحول الله رأسه رأس حمار أو يجعل صورته صورة حمار.
عن أبي هريرة, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, أما يخشى الذي يرفع رأسه قبل الإمام. Does the one who raises his head before the Imam, meaning he precedes the Imam in the Salah, he's moving before the Imam is moving. أن يحول الله رأسه رأس حمار. Does he not fear that Allah would turn his head into the head of a donkey? أو يجعل صورته صورة حمار, or make his entire appearance the appearance of a donkey. So this is a warning, okay? And the warning, as we've established before, a warning indicates something that's haram, okay? A warning indicates something that's haram. So purposely, as Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he said, purposely preceding the Imam is haram. If a person did it on purpose, knowingly, moving before the Imam, then they've done something that's haram. Okay, and then the yani, ama yakhsha in this hadith, does he not fear? This shows that the action is despised. It doesn't necessarily mean, obviously, that the person will be turned and his head is going to be turned into the head of a donkey. Okay, but it's showing that it's an action that's despised. The warning is there. It's a type of metaphor. The ulama said, he should fear. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen, but doesn't the person fear something like this? It's like the same. The donkey is generally used to symbolize what?
As Allah says in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا.
So the donkey symbolizes ignorance, right?
No.
As it comes in the Quran, كالحمار يحمل أسفارا, like a donkey carrying knowledge on his back. Do those that, they have the knowledge but they don't act upon it, okay, then they become like what? They become like if you were to place books of knowledge on the back of a donkey. There's no benefit from it whatsoever. So the donkey is being used to symbolize ignorance. Similarly, when the Imam is there, for us to follow the Imam, to pray behind the Imam, and he's the leader in the Salah, to precede the Imam and not follow the Imam is a type of ignorance. Okay, and this can go both ways. It can go when somebody moves before the Imam, or somebody doesn't move with the Imam. You would see somebody, for example, remaining in position in sujood for a long period of time, and this is a habit in some places, where people would remain for a long period of time after the Imam. The Imam's halfway through Surah Al-Fatiha and they're still in sujood. How are you part of the Jama'ah and you're not following the Imam? No, rather you have to move shortly after the Imam. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now,
as for doing istiraha during the first rak'ah and then the third one, so should a person sit down just a little bit and then stand up?
Yeah, the movement should always be slightly behind the Imam.
No?
Slightly behind
the Imam.
Because
the hadith comes in Sahih Bukhari where the Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, would do istiraha, and he will sit down after the first rak'ah for a little bit and then
brief
get up.
Pause.
No, yeah, brief pause.
Some Imam, they don't do the istiraha.
That's fine, yani, as long as you are slightly behind the Imam. Now, if you're, let's say, for example, you're praying behind an Imam, and he said Allahu Akbar, but he moves real slowly, and you happen to precede him slightly. Okay, you're not at fault for doing that because you're following his takbir, and you started getting up, and he happened to get up very, very slowly. Maybe he's older in age or whatever, and you slightly precede him. Then you're not at fault there. Okay, but those people that are almost racing, and as soon as the Imam starts to say something, they're moving already, and they're moving before the Imam, then that's different. No? Slow motion. What's the slow motion? Are you talking about the? Oh, wait till the Imam goes into sujood, then follow. No, correct. No.
Sorry. When should the Imam, if he's doing the jalsa, when should he say the takbir? Should he say it? Because some will without saying takbir, will go and sit, then they say Allahu Akbar as they go, or should they say the takbir, then go into the jalsa, and everybody else who doesn't do jalsa will kind of get.
Yeah, I mean, he should say the takbir while he's going up in motion, right? While he's going up in motion, because it was known about the companions that they would even wait until the Prophet ﷺ reached sujood before they started moving into sujood. So if they were standing, they waited until the Prophet ﷺ reached to sujood. He actually was in sujood, then they started their motion. So he shouldn't, especially if the Imam knows that he moves slowly, he shouldn't be saying takbir as soon as he's lifting his head out of sujood. He should wait until he's at least, say, halfway through the motion, so that way people are not preceding him. Allahu A'lam. Naam? طيب. Okay, anything else here? Okay, and then like one of the wisdoms that's mentioned is that this opposes the purpose of the congregation, and the purpose being to follow the imam. What happens if somebody does it? The ruling is that it's haram, but does it nullify the salah? No, it doesn't nullify the individual's prayer. So the prayer is still a valid prayer, even if the person preceded the imam. He's done something that's wrong, but he hasn't done something that nullifies the salah. Okay, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he went as far as to say that if a person realized that they've preceded the imam, they should go back. Okay, if they're clearly ahead of the imam, then they should go back. Okay, that was the view of Shaykh al-Islam. And then again, he said that if a person did it on purpose, it would nullify it would nullify their salah if they were doing it on purpose. There's one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, الذي يخفض ويرفع قبل الإمام إنما ناصيته بيد الشيطان. The one who moves up and down before the imam, then his forehead is in the hand of the shaitan. Yani he's being controlled by the shaitan. Naam. Let's go on to the next hadith, inshallah.
نعم. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إنما جعل الإمام ليؤتم به. ليؤتم به فلا تختلفوا عليه فإذا كبر فكبروا وإذا ركع فاركعوا وإذا قال سمع الله لمن حمده فقولوا ربنا ولك الحمد وإذا سجد فاسجدوا وإذا صلى جالسا فصلوا جلوسا أجمعون.
We'll translate this one and then the next one goes with it. So here in this hadith, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, إِنَّمَا جُعِلَ الْإِمَامُ لِيُؤْتَمَّ بِهِ. The imam is there to be followed. فَلَا تَخْتَلِفُوا عَلَيْهِ. So do not oppose the imam. فَإِذَا كَبَّرَ فَكَبِّرُوا. When he makes takbir, then make takbir. وَإِذَا رَكَعَ فَارْكَعُوا. When he makes ruku', make ruku'. وإذا قال سمع الله لمن حمده, when he says سمع الله لمن حمده, فقولوا ربنا ولك الحمد, then say ربنا ولك الحمد. وإذا سجد فاسجدوا. When he makes sujood, then make sujood. وإذا صلى جالسا فصلوا جلوسا أجمعون. And if he prays sitting down, then you should all pray sitting down behind him. Let's read the next hadith and then we'll go on.
وما في معناه من حديث عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت صلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في بيته وهو شاك فصلى جالسا وصلى وراءه قوم قياما فأشار إليهم أن اجلسوا فلما انصرف قال إنما جعل الإمام ليؤتم به فإذا ركع فاركعوا وإذا رفع وارفعوا وإذا قال سمع الله لمن حمده فقولوا ربنا ولك الحمد وإذا صلى جالسا فصلوا جلوسا أجمعون.
So here this hadith is basically the same hadith, except that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ صلى في بيته, he prayed in his home وهو شاك, when he was sick, and this was the sickness near the time of his death. فصلى جالسا, so he prayed sitting down. وصلى وراءه قوم قياما, and people prayed behind him standing up. فأشار إليهم, so while he was in the salah, he signaled to them أن اجلسوا, to sit down. Okay, so while he was in the salah, he was praying sitting, they joined him and they joined standing up. So he signaled to them to sit down because he was the imam and he was sitting down. فلما انصرف قال, and then when he finished from the prayer, he said the same statement that the imam is there to be followed. So make ruku' when he does, and when he says Sami Allah liman hamada, then say Rabbana wa lakal hamd. And if he prays sitting down, then pray sitting down. Okay, now a couple of points here. First of all, جُعِلَ الْإِمَامُ لِيُؤْتَمَّ بِهِ. The imam is there to be followed. فَلَا تَخْتَلِفُ عَلَيْهِ. Then you should not oppose him. Some took the meaning from this statement, فَلَا تَخْتَلِفُ عَلَيْهِ. Imam Malik, he said what? You can't have a different intention behind the imam. Because of this, don't oppose him. There's a view that you can't have one intention while the imam is praying with a different intention. Meaning that I can't pray fard behind an imam praying sunnah. I can't pray sunnah behind an imam praying fard. Okay, that was the view of some. The rest of the scholars, the majority of the scholars said it means don't oppose him in the prayer. Meaning don't oppose him in the movements of the prayer. It's not related to what? To the intention of the salah. And there's other narrations that support the narration when the Prophet ﷺ told Mu'adh after he prayed behind the Prophet ﷺ to go lead the salah with his people. So he prayed his fard behind the Prophet, and then he went and he led other people in prayer, means he was praying a sunnah while they were praying a faridah. Okay, so there was a difference of intention there, and this hadith is authentic. So it shows that you can have different intentions in the salah. Now, regarding to that?
Yes, I was saying because I remember reading from Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz rahimahullah that if a person, he missed Maghrib and he joins for Isha, so he should pray Maghrib first, then do the salam, the taslim, and then join again for Isha. So
No.
he'll get the reward for both, right?
Correct. No.
Or
This is
especially
one view.
in
No.
Ramadan, see, like if someone missed
Ramadan.
the Fard prayer and the Imam has already started
In
Taraweeh,
Taraweeh. And
so
they
he
come
can
and they
maybe
join.
and 2 rakah pray with the Imam and then pray his.
So according to the majority, there is no harm. There's nothing wrong with doing that, according to the majority of scholars. Okay. So and then when he says فَإِذَا رَكَعَ فَارْكَعُوا, when he does, then do. Okay. The fa shows tartib. Okay. When he does this, then do it. Okay. So that indicates following the imam. Now notice here he said فإذا قال وإذا قال الإمام سمع الله لمن حمده فقولوا ربنا ولك الحمد. So that would indicate what? That only the imam in the jama'ah says سمع الله لمن حمده. That the person praying behind the imam doesn't need to say سمع الله لمن حمده. فإذا قال سمع الله لمن حمده فقولوا ربنا ولك الحمد.
صحيح.
So if he says that, then you say ربنا ولك الحمد. You don't need to say سمع الله لمن حمده. Because there is also a minority view that you do. Why? Because that would be the only position, the only movement in salah when there's no what? There's no takbir, right? So you as a ma'moom have moved without saying anything at all. And that's the only time. So Imam Nawawi was of the view that you do either say Sami Allahu liman hamida or say Allahu Akbar. Okay? Because otherwise you have a movement with no dua or dhikr in it at all. However, this is a stronger view because he said when he says Sami Allahu liman hamida, then say Rabbana wa lakal hamd. So Sami Allahu liman hamida is for the imam or for the person who's praying alone. The person who's praying alone, of course, Sami Allahu liman hamida. The imam, Sami Allahu liman hamida, and he also says Rabbana wa lakal hamd. So if you're an imam, then you also say Rabbana wa lakal. You say Sami Allahu liman hamida and Rabbana وَلَكَ الْحَمْدِ. Okay? As for the last part of the hadith, there is a little bit of a difference of opinion as to sitting behind the imam. Some said that there is no sitting behind the imam if he's sitting. Okay? Some said that this is abrogated by the Prophet ﷺ towards the end of his life when he prayed. He led the salah sitting down, and the people prayed standing up behind him. Okay? The reason, this is known, he did do that. However, the difference of opinion is in what? Was he leading the salah, or was Abu Bakr leading that salah? That's the difference of opinion. Because the Prophet ﷺ came in, and Abu Bakr was leading the salah. So the Prophet ﷺ joined the salah next to Abu Bakr. Okay? So some of the scholars, they saw that the Prophet ﷺ basically took over the imamah in the salah. And so then he was leading the salah, and the people would see the movements of Abu Bakr and move accordingly. If that's the case, then the Prophet's praying sitting down, and the people are praying behind him standing up. Okay? So that would indicate that you can pray behind an imam standing while the imam is sitting. And some said, no, Abu Bakr led the salah. The Prophet joined next to him, but Abu Bakr was still leading the salah, which would indicate that this hadith is not abrogated, and the Prophet's statement still applies. If the imam is sitting, then you should sit. Some said what? Some said that if the imam starts the prayer sitting, then you should sit. Okay? And this would be like the combination between all of the proofs. So if you're praying behind an imam who's going to pray sitting down, then you should pray sitting down. But if the salah started and then the imam for some reason needs to sit down in the midst of the prayer, so something happened to him, he feels some pain, his leg is hurting, and he needs to sit, so he sits down while we're in the position where we're supposed to be standing, then you can remain standing behind. The jama'ah does not need to also sit down at that point. Allahu A'lam.
So would we say, because Allah said la yu'tamma, because he's there to lead you.
لا يؤمن أحد.
Yeah, like do not, because إنما جعل الإمام ليؤتم, he's there to lead you, right?
No.
So would we say based off of that, because as Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was standing because he's the one leading, so that's why they stood up, the Sahaba, and Sallallahu didn't say anything?
They were already standing,
No.
right? They were already standing. So the question then becomes, when the Prophet joined the Salah, did he become the Imam or not?
Oh,
and that's where the ikhtilaf lies.
Oh,
Whether he became the Imam or he didn't.
Oh, okay.
Either way, if we were going to pray behind an Imam who's sitting and we sat, then we have this hadith to support us, and there would be no harm or no fault upon the Jama'ah for doing that. Okay?
Also, there's different forms of Rabbana wa lakal hamd.
Rabbana wa lakal hamd or Allahumma Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Naam, both of them are authentic.
What about just Rabbana lakal hamd?
Rabbana lakal hamd or Rabbana wa lakal hamd.
ربنا ولك الحمد حمدا كثيرا.
Those are the dua that comes after that is different. This is a sunnah that comes after that. But as for the main part of the hadith, when he says Sami Allahu liman hamdah, then say Rabbana wa lakal hamd.
Qiyam is like is that for in salah to be standing at the beginning? Is
No.
that for?
It's a fard. No. The only time it's permissible is for darura. The imam can only sit down if he needs to sit down. He's not able to stand. As the Prophet ﷺ said, he said, pray standing, and if you can't, then sit. And if you can't, then laying down. So qiyam is from the pillars of the salah. Only a person has permissibility to sit if he needs to sit. Okay, if he can't stand. Now, somebody asks, Amjad, what if the imam starts standing but sits down in a chair for ruku' and for sujood? You would still make ruku' and sujood behind the imam. If he's not able to make ruku' and sujood, the people behind him still make ruku' and sujood. And then if he's standing, you stand behind him. No. Okay. Anything else here? No, I think that's it. We can go on to the next hadith, inshallah.
عن عبد الله بن يزيد الخدمي الأنصاري رضي الله عنه قال: حدثني البراء وهو غير كذوب قال: كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا قال سمع الله لمن حمده لم يحن أحد منا ظهره حتى يقع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ساجدا ثم نقع سجودا بعده.
نعم. عن عبد الله ابن يزيد الخطمي الأنصاري of the Ansar قال: حدثني البراء وهو غير كذوب. He said, Bara informed me, and he is not a liar. He is not a person that would lie. Now, the scholars, they differed as to this addition here. If you notice, there's what do you call them? Hyphens on both sides of the وَهُوَ غَيْرُ كَذُوب. That means it's an addition. That means this is not part of the original hadith. This is an addition. So the scholars, they differed as to this addition. Is it talking about Al-Bara, one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ? And they said, some said, no, it's not, because the Sahabi does not need a tazkiyah. There's no need to make a tazkiyah of the companion and say, وَهُوَ غَيْرُ كَذُوب, because we know the Sahaba, they're not liars, right? So this clarification would not be necessary. So some of them said that this addition here is speaking of Abdullah ibn Yazid al-Qatmi, who's also a Sahabi, however, not as high level as Al-Bara ibn Azib. However, there's no harm for it for him to be saying this about Al-Bara, just as some said about the Prophet Muhammad when they narrated about him, وَهُوَ الصَّادِقُ الْمَصْدُوقُ. They said he's the honest and the trustworthy. So they didn't need to say that about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's also known that he's honest and trustworthy, but they said it. And it's like an emphasis, right? He informed us of such and such, and he is al-Sadiq al-Masduq. Okay, so there's no harm for that praise to be about al-Bara. قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا قال سمع الله لمن حمده. When he says سمع الله لمن حمده, لم يحن أحد منا ظهره حتى يقع رسول الله ساجدا. So after they stood behind him, they said, we wouldn't move at all. Our backs wouldn't move until يقع رسول الله ساجدا, until the Prophet ﷺ reached the sujood. ثم نقع سجودا بعده. Then we would move into sujood after him. So we see here that they waited for the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to reach the sujood before they started to move. Now the problem with this comes in our time, when if the Imam is moving very quickly. So if we're going to wait for the Imam to get to sujood, and he's only spending 2 seconds in sujood, and we're waiting to even start our movement until he got to sujood, then by the time we get to sujood, he's out of sujood, right? But this shows that the Prophet Muhammad wasn't hurrying and racing. He was taking his time in each position. So this can be used as a proof for that as well. Okay, so they waited until he reached the position, and then they moved. And this can be, this can, again, it can show that you leave a little bit of space behind the Imam, so as to not be equal to the Imam or not to precede the Imam in the movements. نعم. طيب, next hadith.
عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا أمن الإمام فأمنوا فإنه من وافق تأمينه تأمين الملائكة غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه.
عن أبو هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said, إذا أمن الإمام فأمنوا. When the Imam does what? Says Ameen. Then say Ameen. فإنه من وافق تأمينه تأمين الملائكة, because whoever's تأمين, meaning saying Ameen, matches or coincides with the Ameen that the Malaika say, غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Then he will have his previous sins forgiven. Okay. Now this could be used as a proof that what? فإذا أمن الإمام, when the Imam says Ameen, this could be used as a proof that the Imam has to say Ameen out loud. Because how are you going to know that the Imam says Ameen except that you heard him say Ameen? فَأَمِّنُوا, then say Ameen. Okay, so this would support obviously the position of saying Ameen out loud, because if the Imam is saying it quietly and the Jama'ah behind him is saying quietly, then who knows who said Ameen when? We wouldn't know, right? And then this was the view of Imam Bukhari, because he actually has a chapter in his book on what? On saying Ameen out loud. He has a chapter in his book on that. Okay. Some said, the other view is that no, it means that when he reaches the end of Fatiha, then that's when you say Ameen. That's the other view. You know what I mean? So is it that he will have all of his previous sins forgiven? First of all, this is proof that the Malaika, they're present when the salah is being prayed. Okay, the malaika are present. There's a hadith that mentioned when you pray that there's a malaika behind you. There's a hadith that mentioned يَتَعَاقَبُونَ فِيكُمْ مَلَائِكَةٌ بِاللَّيْلِ وَبِالنَّهَارِ, that the malaika, they switch shifts during Fajr and Asr. So they're there to witness the salah, and then they switch shifts with other angels. وَقُرْآنَ الْفَجْرِ إِنَّ قُرْآنَ الْفَجْرِ كَانَ مَشْهُودًا. The Quran that's recited during Fajr is witnessed, it's mashhud. The ulama, they said mashhud by the malaika, that the malaika are there to witness. So the angels are present during the salawat. Are we talking about here غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ, that he will have his sins forgiven? Is it all sins, or is it the minor sins? The scholars differed, and it would seem that the majority said that this is speaking of the minor sins. Why? Because in some narrations it's mentioned مَجْتُنِبَ الْكَبَائِرِ, as long as the person avoids major sins. غُفِرَ لَهُ, his sins will be forgiven. مَجْتُنِبَ الْكَبَائِرِ, as long as he avoids major sins. So that would support the view that this is speaking of all of your minor sins will be forgiven. And we know that major sins require what? They require tawbah. They require a person to make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, this is an easy way to have sins erased. Simply saying Ameen, praying in Jama'ah and saying Ameen would cause our sins to be forgiven.
So the congregation in this point would say Ameen after the Imam?
After the Imam. No, after. فإذا قال إمام فأمين. فإذا أمن فأمين. When he says Ameen, then say Ameen. So it has to be slightly after him. No? Fa indicates ta'qib and tartib. No. طيب.
Different. I read also that that's why you shouldn't eat garlic and those offensive things.
That's
because
true.
the malaika get offended.
Whatever is offensive to the people is offensive to the malaika. No? Whatever offends the people offends the malaika.
Next one.
Go ahead, bismillah.
عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: إذا صلى أحدكم للناس فليخفف فإن فيهم الضعيف والسقيم وذا الحاجة وإذا صلى أحدكم لنفسه فليطول ما شاء.
Jameen. The next hadith goes together. We'll translate this one and read the next one, inshallah. The Prophet Muhammad he said, إذا صلى أحدكم للناس فليخفف. Whoever leads a people in prayer, then let him take it easy. فليخفف. Make it light. خفيف is from light. Make it light. Make the prayer easy and light on the people. فإن فيكم الضعيف, because amongst you is the one who's weak. والسقيم, and the sick one. وذا الحاجة, and the one that has a need. And he needs to go. فإذا صلى أحدكم لنفسه فليطول ما شاء. So when one of you prays alone, then let him pray as long as he wants. Now notice those are both what? Lam al-amr, right?
Oh, yeah.
فليخفف. This is an amr. Then let it do what? Then let him make it light. But also فليطول is Lam al-amr. But does that show that is this an order to make it long when you're alone?
No, because it says ما شاء.
Masha, exactly. So the amr can also be used to show permissibility. The amr in Arabic can be used, sighat al-amr can be used to show wujub, or it can be used to show permissibility. فَلْيُطَوِّل, then let him make it long, masha, as long as he wants. Okay, so the amr can indicate wujub, or it could indicate permissibility as well. Okay, if you want to read the last hadith, and then because they actually
نعم.
the same.
وما في معناه من حديث أبي مسعود الأنصاري رضي الله عنه قال: جاء رجل إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال: إني لأتأخر عن صلاة الصبح من أجل فلان مما يطيل بنا. قال: فما رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم غضب في موعظة قد أشد مما غضب يومئذ. فقال: يا أيها الناس إنا منكم منفرين فأيكم أما الناس فليوجز فإن من ورائه الكبير والضعيف وذا الحاجة.
Similar meaning to the last hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, Inni, or somebody said to the Prophet ﷺ, Inni la ata'akharu an salat al-subh min ajli fulan. He said, I am late, which could mean I miss salat al-fajr in jama'ah, or I go late. It could mean either one. It could, la ta'akhar, it could mean that I don't go at all, or it could mean that I go late. Min ajli fulan, because of so-and-so. Why? Mimma yutilu bina, because he prays long. قال فما رأيت النبي غضب في موعظة قط أشد مما غضب يومئذ. I never saw the Prophet ﷺ get as mad as he got at that time. Subhanallah. I never saw him as mad as I saw him at that time. And he said, يا أيها الناس, O people, إن منكم منفرين. There's some amongst you that cause others to run away or go away or leave the good. There's some amongst you that mislead people from what's good for them. فَأَيُّكُمْ أَمَّا النَّاسِ فَلْيُوجِزْ. So whoever of you leads the people in prayer, then let him take it light and make it easy. فَإِنَّ مِنْ وَرَائِهِ الْكَبِيرِ, because behind him is the old person, وَالضَّعِيف, and the weak one, وَذَا الْحَاجَةِ, and the one that has a need. Okay? So the wisdom in the hadith is mentioned that because behind you are such and such and such. When the Prophet mentions that wisdom or that reason, then if that reason is not there, then it's permissible to do the opposite. Meaning, if you pray alone, pray as long as you want. If you're praying Qiyam al-Layl, pray as long as you want. If you're praying even an obligatory prayer, and the only people that are with you are people that you know have no problem with the prayer being long, then there's no problem. Pray as long as you want. But if you're leading a jama'ah, a general congregation, then you should make the salah easy. Okay? And this is a way to combine between the meanings, because in some situations it was mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ prayed long prayers. It was mentioned at times that he prayed Salatul Fajr and he led a long salah. And he prayed Salat even Salat al-Maghrib or Dhuhr, and he prayed a long salah. So how do we combine between those meanings? The ulama, they said that when he prayed with the companions that he knew very well, who were praying with him in the masjid regularly, and he knew they could handle that prayer, then he lengthened the prayer sometimes. Okay? But if he was leading a general congregation, or there was amongst the congregation older people, weak people, and whatnot, then he didn't pray a long prayer. Okay? So it's important for us to keep this in mind. We shouldn't lengthen the salah when there's behind us, when we see that there's amongst us are the old and the weak and all of that. Then the sunnah is not to make the salah long. And it was from the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad that he made things easy for people. Okay, now
he would also shorten the salah if you hear the baby's cry or something, right?
He was what?
He would also shorten the salah if you would hear a kid cry or something.
No. So it happened like if he heard a child crying that he went through the rest of the salah quickly. No. I think that brings us to the end of the chapter. We won't start the next one because the next one has a couple long. The next is Babu Sifat Salat al-Nabi, the description of the Prophet's prayer.
Question.
Jamil, question.
What if a person missed 1 or 2 rakah and then the Imam he do the sajda sahwi, like he some kind of mistakes? So what the person if he missed 1 rakah or 2, if he's how like when Imam make the taslim, he just go with them the sujood, not making a taslim and go to and then how he can.
Yeah, the right thing to do would be to follow the Imam. إنما جعل الإمام ليؤتم به. The Imam is there to be followed. So the right thing to do is to follow the Imam in the sujood sahu and then continue the salah.
What about the taslim too? You make taslim?
No taslim. No
like,
taslim.
because you do the some Imam they do like the taslim first, then do two.
No, in that case, when he did the first taslim, then you can get up and continue. But if he did sujood sahu before the salam, then you have to follow him in the sujood sahu, because you can't get up before the Imam made taslim. You can't until he makes taslim. But once he made the first taslim, then it's permissible for you now to continue, because he made taslim. And if he made taslim and he's making sujood sahu after taslim, then the ma'mum might not know that he's going to make sujood sahu, and he already started getting up. Right? So no fault.
Speaking of the saying salam, right? The followers. So do you make salam when the Imam do both, right and left, or you follow him with right and then you follow him and then say salam?
Yeah, the scholars, they differed on this issue. Should you start making the salam when he makes the first one, or wait? Some said wait until he's making the second one. Some said wait until he finishes. Right? But the most important thing is that you're not doing it at the same time as the Imam. There should be at least a little bit of time between your movement and the movement of the Imam. It's just like with the movement from one position to another. Some said you wait until the Imam finishes saying Allahu Akbar until you move. Or as we saw in the Hadith, if you're in the standing position, you can see the Imam, then you wait until he reaches the next position. The most important thing is that we're not ahead of the Imam and we're not moving directly with the Imam. So that's the most important thing. As long as there's some space and time between us, between our movement and the movement of the Imam.
What if the Imam is leading and let's say it's 4 rakah and he finished 3 rakah and he finds out that he didn't have wudu and he was leading. So what should he do?
What should the Imam do?
Yeah, he bring someone full.
Yeah, he should leave the salah and bring somebody in his place. He leaves the salah He can call somebody up
But
in his
in
place. He can
some
say
masajid-
so and
In
so.
some masajid, like
They're not going to understand what's going
they
on.
like if you bring someone,
They think the whole salah is broken, right? But that's the right thing to do.
What if it happens?
When Umar ibn al-Khattab left the salah because he was stabbed, then he pulled somebody else up in his place to continue the prayer. So that's the right thing to do, although a lot of people are not going to understand it because of ignorance and whatnot.
What if it happens at the end of the salah? He remembers.
He remembers at the end of salah that after he finished the salah,
Yeah.
then he should repeat his salah, but the prayer of the people behind him is correct. Their prayer was correct and his prayer was wrong.
I think it happened to.
If he's sure, Ayub, huh? Not if he's not sure and he thinks maybe I didn't have wudu, no. But if he's sure.
One of the Hudayfi, he broke it, or he didn't have wudu.
Yeah, he told
he
them.
started the salah, and he said daqiqa. So he made wudu, came back,
And they waited for him.
Yeah.
And this is after he started the salah.
it's on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what happened?
He didn't pull somebody in his
So
place?
The Muqtadi is in Qiyam.
And I think everybody's just standing and waiting.
Oh.
He took off his dish, made wudu, came
He
back.
came back and restarted the salah?
Yeah, he did,
I
he
think
did.
So yeah.
He said Allahu Akbar again.
Yeah. So
Man,
and then
big hard mashallah.
yeah.
Hey,
No.
And then you guys heard about the whole issue where there was no imam in Medina for Fajr. So the one
Nobody showed up.
Nobody showed up. No Hudayfi, no Salah al-Budayr. So the one who was organizing this actually got fired by Sudais.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hold on.
So now they
What
have
happened?
a backup for every Salah. So now either if Budayr is going to be there, Hudayfi has to be there. So now they
So
have.
somebody else led the salah.
Imagine if you were in the front row. Allahu Akbar. You would have been the first.
I would just go up there and start the salah.
Just go, say Allahu Akbar and start.
They
You
can't do
you
anything.
you would think they have a backup in
Oh,
case.
And they were waiting 30, 40 minutes.
Oh, when you get out. Oh, that was
This is a different situation.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But there was
Tayyib,
no
inshallah.
imam.
So somebody else
If
led?
there's
Somebody else
No,
led?
they just waited. They had to call somebody.
can you share the link to join
I
the
shared
group?
it, but for some reason
Here
it
in
wouldn't
the
let me
chat?
share. Yeah. I tried sharing. You try sharing.
So
Can
nobody
you
went
want to send it?
in the front to
Yeah,
finish,
send it
or
send
to
it on
do
WhatsApp.
They're gonna
so we can
have to
share
wait
it.
for one of the imams.
Even when Hudayfi said, even when Sheikh Hudayfi said,
I'll share the
Daqiqa,
link for
when he
whoever
said
wants
Daqiqa,
to
right?
join the
Anybody could have
WhatsApp for
joined it.
updates. Go ahead, can you send it?
You could have, but yeah. No,
I would have done it. No,
You'll be the.
no. Inshallah.
What if they said something if you led?
Oh well, no.
Where
they
do we
have
share them?
cards.
Just share it to me on
I don't think.
WhatsApp.
I don't think the God
Then
will
I'll
let
share
you
it
do
with
it
you.
anyway.
Five,
Yeah. I don't think the God will let
So
you.
if you're leading, will they like take you out? Like obviously they couldn't, right? Like
I don't think they can
Yeah, no,
though.
but not anyone would jump to do it. It's
Yeah, that's like
Bukhari,
it's a big responsibility.
Yeah, can
man.
you-
You're like in the house of Allah, and then you're gonna be.
You know which one? Right,
Make sure you do
the
everything
join.
right.
the
that you
wrestling,
wrestling. Make sure you do everything right. That you know.
This should work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just copy
that's
paste
scary,
it.
you know.
it is scary, yeah.
Yeah.
I can only picture.
I shared it, Muhammad.
Okay.
Should be good.
The second holiest mosque.
Yeah, man, that's so scary.
Biggest.
طيب ان شاء الله سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.
I would be scared, man. Like, no way.
Yeah,
You'll do it?
yeah.
I would
Oh,
do it
man.
again.